All right, so 3 weekends from now, on January 4th and 5th, we're going to have a 2 day retreat with a teacher of mine named Don Berry. So the schedule will be from 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time till 4 each day, and the subject of the retreat will be the 7 factors of enlightenment in Theravada Buddhism. The practice will be Dhammakaya meditation, so it's a classic Theravada type practice. If you've ever done mantra before, it includes a mantra and a choice between a visualized object or noticing the breath. So most of what I teach actually is not technique focused at all. It's just on non-duality and the recognition of presence, the recognition of this. That's the primary thing that I talk about and transmit. But um, using a particular practice or using a specific method to localize your consciousness and your attention on a particular object, it does have interesting effects, and you'll notice how it either increases your continuity of noticing or just gives you a big headache. So you'll see for the 7 factors of enlightenment, I'll explain what they are briefly, and then I'll go a little more into what exactly Dhammakaya is or what that means. So the 7 factors of awakening are mindfulness, investigation of states, energy, rapture or happiness, calm or tranquility, concentration, and equanimity. So these are the results or factors that arise in the mind stream in consciousness as a result of meditation. So if you're developing mindfulness or you're working on the increasing the continuity of noticing, what will happen is that all these other factors can arise to support that noticing and support that stability of presence. So, for example, the first one is mindfulness. So, mindfulness is the basis for everything. It's the reason. It's the first one. You don't really have any of the other factors arise if you're not aware. So, how do we define mindfulness? There's a couple different ways of defining it, but generally it's referring to the moment to moment noticing of what is happening in the present. That's generally what mindfulness means. It means to be mindful of something. I guess in uh, society at large now, there's a definition of mindfulness in the sense that you should be like heedful of other people's feelings or sensitivities. This is not that. Yeah, this actually means the direct moment to moment noticing of what is happening. Yeah, that's what we mean. We mean you're being aware, being mindful from one moment to the next. So let's say you're doing mindfulness of breathing. It means you're aware as the body inhales, you're aware as the body exhales. Aware again as the body inhales, you're just aware of that process of breathing. Relax naturally for as long as you can. Your mind will wander. At that point, mindfulness has vanished and distraction or mind wandering has occurred. So then you return to the meditation object. And this is the basis of every single practice. All of them, this is what happens in all of them, whether it's a mantra, whether it's a visualized image, whether it's breathing. The idea is to just return to the present again and again and again until the this vacillating, oscillating nature of a process of mind wandering comes to a stop or comes to a it reduces. So briefly, the next factor is investigation of states. Specifically, it's called investigation of the Dhamma. So it's referring to investigation of mental processes and different parts of the experiential field. So an example of investigation of states would be to notice how the mind, how mind wandering actually occurs. So to begin to see that you're with the meditation object for 1 second, 2 seconds, 1 minute, 2 minutes, and then the mind goes off to something else. How does that happen? You can actually only see a mind wandering after the fact. You can never see it as it happens. It's like falling asleep. You never see the moment you fall asleep, because by definition falling asleep is the absence of consciousness. By definition, the moment of a mind wandering is the absence of awareness. So consciousness is still there. You don't become unconscious. You don't like lose you don't, it's not like amnesia or falling asleep in meditation. But awareness gives way to unawareness, and the mind wanders. This happens, continuously throughout a meditation session. So investigation of states is to begin to see the different mechanics of uh, of these mental processes. So start to notice them. Another example of an object of investigation of states is, for example, you may notice the arising of a forethought before an impulse. So let's say I see a glass here of a drink that I like, or water, and 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 immediately, as soon as there's like visual contact with this cup, boom, this like little flash of a thought appears of me reaching for it, or my hand reaching for it. And then there's an impulse to actually reach for it. And then based on that impulse, that inclination to reach for it, I exercise the intention to reach for it. So this is happening so fast we don't notice it. But this is an example of investigation of states. When you have mindfulness and investigation of states, these factors begin to arise that support further continuity. So that one is energy. So you'll notice that when you're on a meditation retreat or you're doing more of it, you'll notice this wind starts to pick up. It's like there's this invisible support behind you, or behind the practice. You have energy, you have vigor, you have interest in doing it. There's a feedback loop now. So compare, like, your mind is very groggy and you're trying to meditate and you can't really, you can't really get that continuity, or um, this seamlessness of noticing and presence. Like that's not happening. So compare that to um, the meditation sessions where that that stream of continuity is there, and there's the arising of enjoyment of that process. So there is an actual wind. There's an actual like a force, a feedback loop that can begin to arise when you're doing meditation, and that's referred to as energy. It's also a reference to a kind of Yeah, an energy that is reflected in the body. So it's as if your body is more awake, as if your body is more alive, like there's more voltage in your system. Yeah, this is a side effect of of right mindfulness and investigation of states, right mindfulness and seeing. What's an example to go back? What's an example of wrong, quote, wrong mindfulness? Uh, the word right in Buddhism, or like the Eightfold Path, you have right view, right livelihood, right effort, for example. What does it mean by what does the word right mean in this context? It just refers to that specific factor in relation to the goal of Buddhism, which is realizing the Four Noble Truths, realizing suffering, realizing its cause, realizing its end, and realizing the path to its end. It's right in that context. So if it's mindfulness that isn't related to that context, it'd be considered wrong mindfulness. So an example of wrong mindfulness and wrong concentration in the case of Buddhism is the kind of mindfulness and concentration it takes to take the life of another being, right? To capture an animal or hurt a person. This is classified as wrong concentration, wrong attention, wrong mindfulness. A more nuanced form of wrong, for example, or unskillful, is the degree of effort being used and the degree of craving being used in the meditation practice. So it's one thing to be aware and to be attentive of your object, right? It's another, and in the present moment, it's another to be, you know, obsessively trying to make this happen. Like that would be classified as unskillful. That's going to give you a headache. That's going to hurt. Please stop. Don't go there. Just like let go, let it be aware, notice, let the power build up from the pure noticing, from the pure awareness, and get out of the way as much as you can. That's how you practice. You don't like you know, it's it's not the same as the kind of effort and the kind of craving you would use for other activities. So the way that meditation and awakening works is different than the way things occur in space time or how we get things in the world. In the world, the harder we push, the faster we move, the more effort we apply. Generally, the quicker we get results. But you try that same approach in meditation, and you find that it's not possible. Like the harder you try, the more difficult it becomes. The more that you push, the more of a headache you start having. Why? It's because reality, this process is attempting to teach you to let go, attempting to teach you to just notice and relax and open. Okay, so you have energy. So that means you're starting to experience the wind behind the meditation. Uh, it's a way of putting it is things are starting to get interesting. Yeah, you're starting to enjoy the process. What follows energy is rapture. So rapture is another word for strong happiness. So there's like the happiness that you get from, you know, your Amazon package arrives. You're like you get like 3 seconds of happiness or something. I don't know, maybe 3 milliseconds. Maybe it's not even a full second. You're like, oh yeah, my package came. So that's a kind of happiness or I guess pleasure in a way. But the kind of happiness that we're talking here, specifically the word rapture, that is referring to the happiness that is born of letting go. It's different. It's the happiness that comes from uh, releasing whatever the mind is wandering to, releasing your preoccupations and doing nothing. There's a happiness, there's an inner happiness that emerges from doing nothing, either from doing nothing or from doing just one thing. Both of those give rise to rapture. Doing just one thing, for example, is um, on the retreat, you'll be given a meditation options between a couple different meditation objects, visual ones or tactile, so the body, and a mantra. And you'll use those as continuously as you can for 2 days. You can even start Friday if you want. But basically, with a relaxed, with an open, yet continuous awareness, you just say this mantra and you notice the breath from one moment to the next. From the moment you get up in the morning to the moment you go to sleep on the third day or on Sunday. Even during our talks and during our conversations, to the best that you can, you notice the meditation object, and or you use the mantra, one or the other, whatever is most comfortable for you. But the idea is that by doing one thing, you put consciousness in a specific room where the continuity of presence, the continuity of noticing, becomes unimpeded or uninterrupted. And you will find, uh, if any of you've done meditation retreats, you get the sense on the third or fourth day or something. You're like, oh, I understand why people do this. I get it. There's a reason people do meditation retreats. This is the reason. Yeah, the reason is that the energy arises, the rapture arises, and if you don't cling to that energy and if you don't cling to that rapture, then further letting go allows even deeper maturation of the factors which led to it, which are mindfulness and investigation of states. So that means more, a deeper happiness can come, or deeper energy that can become increased. So you're not doing this necessarily um, to experience rapture, right? Like that's not the aim. The aim, at least in this particular practice and approach, is to enter tranquility, like evenness of mind, equanimity. If thoughts are happening, sure, thoughts are happening, not a big deal. If thoughts are not happening, then thoughts are not happening. That's also not a big deal. It is what it is. But the idea is that through this return to mindfulness and through this return to the object again and again and again, and this letting go that happens again and again and again, your tranquility, your equanimity, and your continuity become much stronger, more increased. Okay. So the rapture and the happiness. After that, the next factor is calm or tranquility. So when this uh, like natural happiness comes from noticing, another word for it is like the bliss of presence or the bliss of experience. Um, Peter Brown often talks about these infinite textures of meaningfulness, these infinite textures of experience, blissful, uh, and that being blissfully so. So there is a uh, calming or a tranquility that can arise when the mind is no longer grasping for external forms of happiness. Like when it's doing this meditative process and this happiness is arising, this peace starts to set in. Maybe the peace may even come before the happiness. Like I'm describing it in the classic 7 steps, but they don't actually have to happen that way. Any of them can arise at any point. So with this contentedness that comes from the practice, from the meditation, emergent from that contentedness can be this very deep sense of peace and deep sense of calm, and that is tranquility. So at this point, even when you start moving in, even when happiness begins to really set in, you'll notice that your mind starts to do less. It has an inclination to do less because doing less feels good. It's actually this feedback loop. Like finally, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to give rise to any intentions. You don't have to try. You don't have to make anything happen. You notice that the mind, you're really just fine with everything that is. That's a very, I mean, that's a beautiful room. That's a beautiful place to come to just on its own. And with this place of not needing to control anything, not needing to make anything happen, not needing to move, a kind of tranquilization arises in the mind body. So that tranquilization is what we mean by calm. So if you've ever meditated and you notice that your body's so like just relaxed, it's just it's tranquilized. It's just very, very, very relaxed. It gets relaxed from not doing anything. So there's the relaxation of going through the body and part by part, as done, for example, in Vipassana or fractional relaxation. And then there's the relaxation of not doing anything. Those are different. Yeah. One is very much, you know, deep bodily relaxation, which has its importance. And the other is a kind of relaxation from knowing that, everything is just happening. Like immediacy is just happening. Immediacy is just unfolding. Reality is unfolding. So that's a different kind of relaxation. There's a different kind of relaxation when you see that you don't actually have to do anything. Whether you do something or you try, it's immediate. Reality's present. Whether you don't do something and don't try, reality is also immediate and present. Whether you hold on or whether you let go, reality is the case. Immediacy is the case. So there's a kind of release that comes from that recognition that whatever is done is just this. So, in the context of um, this practice that we'll be doing in 3 weeks for the retreat, tranquility is what arises when you're relaxed and you're just watching the meditation object, or you're just noticing the breath moving, and this peace starts building up. This peace starts setting in. That's what that is. So with calm, the the next factor is concentration. So concentration refers to a collectedness of attention. So concentration means that actually, I mean, it's really not a good word, at least in our lexicon, because when we think of concentration, we think of force immediately. We think of when we were in school and our teachers were like, concentrate, focus. This is not the same type of concentration that we're referring to here. In this, We're referring to a collectedness of mind, a stability that comes from returning to noticing and presence again and again and again and again and again. A collectedness that comes and arises when the mind is no longer needing to do anything, is no longer attempting to control or assert um, that conditions be a certain way. Yeah, concentration is actually just this unwavering collectedness. Awareness, the continuity of awareness becomes unwavering. That's how that's defined. So usually, if let's say we take a break from any meditation for like a month or something, you don't meditate for a month, and then the first day you try to meditate, you try to meditate again, and like you understand presence, you understand noticing, or like you get all this stuff, but for some reason your mind is just all over the place. There's no, even if the noticing is, even if you have the recognition of that, that noticing is only there for a few seconds at a time, and then you start thinking about a bunch of stuff and whatever. So compare that, like let's put that here. Let's say that's a 1 on a scale of 1 to 10, and then a 10 is like your noticing is continuous, unbroken, natural, and you don't need to do anything. It's just happening. So for some people that's natural, but for others, even if we have the recognition of awareness, the presence of that awareness and of that recognition may not be very continuous or may not be very prevalent. So we take up the number of moments or the number of seconds in a given day. You can estimate or know generally how aware you are of those given moments. For most of us, it's a pretty small number, unless we're on a meditation retreat. So this continuity is referred to as um, so samadhi refers to these deep meditative states, but it also refers to this level of continuity. So when someone says, "Oh, his or her samadhi is very good," it means that their continuity of noticing um, is high. Like of those moments of in a given day, the majority of them, the person is aware or whatever. So you can have high levels and differing levels of continuity and differing forms of awakening. So the awakening is the insight, right? The awakening is the realization of mind as the witness, or the realization of mind as nothingness, or the realization of mind as like not having a nature at all, which is what I describe. The mind is nothing other than what appears. There's different kinds of awakening that people describe. There's different configurations of realization that people describe. That's referring to insight. The continuity of your noticing is referring to samadhi. So you're understanding what your direct experience of this is. That is the kind of awakening that is occurring. Obviously, Vedanta and Buddhism have a different take and a different direct experience of the natural state of reality. And then there's samadhi, which is the continuity of your noticing. So you can have very, very high continuity of noticing. That means your mind is like very quiet. Your mind doesn't wander very much. You're continuously in presence, but that presence is the witness. So that's Ramana Maharshi's case. Always in the sense, always in the experience of witnessing, because he did 12 years in a cave, so his samadhi was like perfect. Mind didn't wander very much. Was aware in his sleep. That's how developed his samadhi was. His continuity was so deep that when he had arm cancer, it did not really bother him that much. Like the pain wasn't a big deal because his mind was so quiet. But clearly, the realization he's describing, the self, the witness, is a bit different than what other people talk about, or at least particularly in Buddhism. So I'm just illustrating this to tell you that there's a difference between uh, awakening. There's a difference between realization, insight, and the continuity of noticing. And oftentimes these two things get conflated. So generally, for example, you may have the immediacy of you may notice the immediacy of presence, the immensity of all of this, and the infinite textures of the experiential field. But you're like, but why isn't this constant? Why do I only notice this for 5 minutes at a time or 2 minutes at a time? Like, isn't this supposed to be continuous? So reality is continuous. Experience is continuous. What is not continuous is your noticing. So your noticing can go up or down, but the presence of reality actually doesn't go up or down. It doesn't change. It doesn't alternate. It doesn't oscillate. It doesn't vacillate. The only thing that oscillates or vacillates is our noticing, is our attention. So this is a very important distinction to understand. You can always increase your level of noticing by meditating more or by having less to be concerned or worried about, right? That's a possibility. It's possible to become efficient as a meditator so that your collectedness of mind, increases and there's less wandering. But this isn't necessarily related to the stages of awakening, because even a person that is not undergoing non-duality or has not realized non-duality at all can have very, very high levels of samadhi, can have very, very high levels of continuity of noticing. But it doesn't mean that that the dissolution of duality has occurred. So take an example of like a beginner meditator that happens to have, skill and aptitude. And by using effort, for example, they're able to just like really, really be noticing from one moment to the next. But that's all coming from their ego. Yeah, that's all that force that they're using to make attention be in the present moment is coming from intense clinging and striving, right? And clearly they have the sense of being in time. Clearly they have the sense of being a separate self, but the continuity is really high. Yeah, they're able to sit for really long periods of time. Compare that to a person in the who has the case where duality has collapsed. There's no clinging. There's very little craving, and there's no navigation of the mind. It's not reaching into time anymore. It's not attempting to assert itself in the past, the present, or the future. But for whatever reason, this person may have a busy life, so their continuity of noticing is not as unbroken as the other guy or the other girl. It's just so there's differentiation here. I just wanted to explain that. Yeah, because we often like awakening could happen, and then you're like, why isn't this continuous? It's supposed to be continuous. Ramana Maharshi says it's continuous. Yeah, reality is continuous. What became continuous for Ramana was noticing, was samadhi, was attention. Why? Because he spent 12 years in a cave. That's why it became continuous. Didn't do anything for a decade. Yeah, of course it gets continuous. All right. So concentration, collectedness, this unwavering, unbroken continuity of awareness that happens naturally. That, along with the other factors, can give rise to the final one, which is equanimity. So equanimity is this it's this balance that occurs in the mind. It's this, like, it doesn't matter what happens. It doesn't matter. That's a powerful state. So equanimity is, you're sitting in the meditation hall, and usually this guy slams the door when he comes in and out of the hall a little too loud, and like for 5 days he's done it every single time. You don't know why someone doesn't point out to him that this is obnoxious, but on the sixth day you're like, he could open and close that door 100 times and it's not going to bother me. Like, it's all good. Yeah. Equanimity is the release of concern and attachment to any outcome. You don't need anything to happen anymore. You don't need anything to happen anymore. You don't want anything to happen anymore. Wanting and needing, these are very gross. They're grosser mental formations. They're less subtle. But when you enter equanimity, the mind is so perfectly balanced, perfectly whole, perfectly complete, that these, like, less subtle formations don't arise anymore, or they're arising less, significantly less. So equanimity is often experienced on meditation retreats. Yeah. As a result of your practice in general in your daily life, of course, you see how all these factors are relevant in your daily practice, and just in awakening in general, right? They're all relevant. They're all present. You notice after major shifts, suddenly you find that you're more aware. Suddenly you find that you're more mindful. That's normal. Suddenly you find that there's a significantly greater degree of happiness and peace. Why? Because there's been a major letting go. This is all. These factors don't only exist in the case of meditation retreats. I'm just explaining what can happen in regards to them on a retreat. So, but these are all factors that we don't necessarily have to cultivate each of them. Like, you don't have to be like, oh, this week I'm going to work on happiness, like that. You don't need to do that. But it is useful to see that, oh, there are certain aspects of the experiential field. There's certain parts of these rooms that enhance, support, and deepen noticing. And those parts are these seven factors. Like, when you've entered equanimity and you're not concerned with what happens, and you're not attempting to do anything, how much is your mind really going to wander? I mean, it doesn't wander very much at that point, because you're okay with whatever's happening. You're thinking, you're not thinking, it doesn't matter. You you're in the equanimity from uh the recognition of immediacy, right? In the context of our retreat, you're going to be noticing the immediacy of the visual image, or the immediacy of the breath, or the immediacy of the mantra, right? That's the spin that I put on it because of everything I've taught all of you up to this point. You can see it that way. You don't have to approach it in the sense that, like, I'm doing this method to get something. You can approach it in the sense of, like, hey, there's this room of experience that happens to be showing up on the fourth and the fifth, and I'm going to go check it out, see what this whole thing's about. see it as the uh, noticing the immediacy and the presence of the object and how that affects the experiential field. With equanimity, there's really um, an example is in the Theravada stages of insight. Equanimity is one of the higher ones. I think it's present right before cessation, and the reason it's the state right before cessation is that when when the experiential field is about to uh, vanish and cessation is about to occur, the mind has to be in this deep equanimity and uh, absence of control or conditioning or need. So a funny thing that happens like right in this kind of territory is that things start to get weird, and there's like this sense that the mind and everything is about to disappear. You really begin to feel like you're hurling towards your own annihilation. And so there's these thoughts of expectancy actually start to come up. Like, oh, is it about to happen? I'm about to, you know, enter. You kind of start to get a feel that uh, yeah, it's almost like your system begins to sense that a winking out or vanishing is about to happen. And in that, you'll find that the main disturbance to equanimity is the expectation. So you can just start to notice the expectation as a mental formation arise and then disappears. It's not a permanent thing. You see the impermanence in it, and when you see that even any expectation for anything to happen is just another phenomena, there's like deeper letting go and even deeper equanimity. And this isn't just the case in cessation. It could be in the case with any meditative state or any particular spiritual experience. There's a sense of being at the edge. You have the sense like something is about to happen, and that expectancy, uh, and that sense of being on the edge is in a way, it's like it's not exactly noticeable or apparent that the edge of something happening is as much reality as the thing that follows that edge. So let's say you're about to enter like a very deep level of stillness. Let's use this as an example. And in this level of stillness, you sense that your body is beginning to disappear. And so this expectation, these little impulses come up. It's like, oh yes, yes, my body's about to disappear. I'm about to enter something important. So that hesitation or that kind of uh, thoughts that you have at the edge of something and the experience of being at the edge of something is just as immediate, just as much reality as actually falling off that edge and entering whatever it is. So let's say the body disappears and you enter some kind of very collected state of samadhi, and your body's not perceptible, and you're not able to think even if you tried, and the mind is very bright. You've entered a different state of consciousness. You have entered a different room. That room is just as immediate, just as much reality as the edge was, as the door was. So you have the normal time, space, five senses, consensus reality room, and then there's a door, and that's the edge. You feel like something's about to happen. You open the door, You go through the door and you're in another space. The same thing can be applied to psychedelic states, lucid dreaming, out of body states. You're still in a room, you're still in reality. It's just a different room. It's a different TV channel. And what's the utility or the function of that? Well, you can learn some things in rooms that you can't learn in other rooms. That's the utility. So there's certain things you'll notice in particular rooms that you wouldn't notice in another one. There's certain things you'll learn on one TV channel, other things that you'll learn on another TV channel. And those learnings and those experiences can confer particular levels of release or particular levels of letting go. So they have their use, but it's important to see that, of course, they're just different rooms. They're just different channels. They're all equally reality, all equally immediate. The sense that you're on the edge of something, the sense that you're almost there but you're quite not, that sense is just a feeling, is just a thought. That thought of, I've done this for so long, why hasn't anything happened yet? That thought and feeling is just as immediate, just as present, just as awake as its opposite, which could be, for example, this is it, there's nothing to do. These are assertions. Like, reality doesn't actually say I'm done. It doesn't say anything. It's your thoughts that say those things, right? Which are also reality, of course. But I'm saying the field itself isn't making any assertions. It's not presenting any models. It's not presenting any interpretations. Those are all derived and concluded in thought. So the sense that you're at the edge of something, the sense that you're almost there, the sense that you had it but you lost it, the sense that I had it but I don't know when it's going to come back, the sense that uh, something's going on but I don't know quite what. All of these feelings, all of these feeling states and their accompanied thoughts are totally immediate and they're 1000% what they are. So, the same way that seeing is 1000% seeing, and hearing is 1000% hearing, and tasting is 1000% tasting, doubt is 1000% doubt, fear is 1000% fear, anxiety is 1000% anxiety, suffering is 1000% suffering, whatever form of suffering that is. Reality doesn't hold back at all, ever. Even the sense that you're holding back is 1000% the sense that you're holding back. Yeah. It's like the analogy I made the other week where, like, if my vision was reduced by 50%, the clarity of it was reduced by 50%, that 50% would be 1000% what it is. It's only 50% in comparison to what it used to be in terms of the vividness and the clarity of what is being seen. But as far as the presence of that experience, the presence of that visual data, that is 1000% what it is. So we make a distinction. We have the sense like, yeah, I'm almost there, or I was there yesterday, but I'm not anymore, or um, you know, when is something going to happen? When is this big shift going to happen? Wow, I've been doing this for a really long time. Nothing has happened. It's important to just see that every single one of those thoughts is a pure, undefiled, unobstructed, immediate expression of reality. Like everything completely exhausts itself in its arising. Like it explodes every millisecond. Every thought is an explosion of these wisps of colors and forms in the mind's eye. So the sense that you're almost there, the sense that you're not there, and the sense that you are there are just feelings and assertions in thought that are arising in reality. I'm done is an assertion. I need to go further is an assertion. I'm not there yet is an assertion. I'm way past being there is an assertion. I've been here for a long time. That's an assertion. There's nothing more to do. That's an assertion. Every assertion is reality. It doesn't mean it accurately describes, right, what is happening. Like I can tell you to the best that I can what salt tastes like, but that's not going to capture it. It's the same thing with this example. Like reality itself is not actually making assertions. It's not saying it's this way, it's that way. It just is. So it's yeah. The edge is just as much reality as falling off it. You're on the edge, like, whoa, I'm so close, something is about to happen. And then you start falling off. You're falling, you're in the abyss, the deconstruction, the dissolution is happening. You're like, oh Lord, help me. And then you plunge into the water and you experience the coolness of release, the, the coolness of liberation, of dispassion. So the edge of anticipation, the after effect of falling, of dissolution, and the quote arrival at tranquility, at peace, at equanimity, and at liberation. Those are all reality. Like those are all just different rooms. Yeah, it's not like when I was at the edge that wasn't reality, and then when I hopped over the edge, it somehow became reality, and then when I fell into the water, it became reality 2.0. That's not what happens. That is not what happens. It may seem like that's the case, but it's not. Every crazy psychedelic whatever experience you've had, quantum, non-local, deity consciousness, if you remember it, it was within reality, it was within consciousness, within experience, all words for the same thing. So you don't actually have to worry about trying to get somewhere, about trying to get something, when you see very clearly that no matter what you get, it's just this, but it looks different. This kind of understanding is what beheads the whole transcendent model. This idea that, um, when we get to the top of the mountain, it will be very, very much different than the bottom. And it's different in the level of appearance, right? It's different. Dispassion is certainly a different state. Equanimity is certainly a different state than contraction and intense clinging. We know that. But the difference in regards to understanding and realization is to see the equality of all states, that they're fundamentally present. So They're fundamentally awake. They're fundamentally illumination. They're fundamentally immediate. And there's a great degree of, all is well that comes from seeing that. So with this retreat on the 4th and 5th, you'll be getting the classic Theravada version of me. So I probably won't be using analogies about rooms and uh, basically how I talk most of the time. It'll be more like, okay, come back to the meditation object. How's that going? Let go. It'll be more um, practical, and I wouldn't say practical. It'll just be more specific in regards to the deepening of the factors and the increasing of the continuity of noticing. That will really be the emphasis of it. And you'll find that when using a visual object, for example, or when using the breath, that you are able to get locked into this room of noticing immediacy continuously. Like that really can happen. So it's possible for the configurations to shift to such a degree that your continuity of noticing becomes really unimpeded, unobstructed, and unbroken. And that is a very interesting thing to experience. It makes it really clear that, oh yeah, like you do certain things, you do X and Y, and that produces Z. You meditate more, you have less to think about, you're very continuous with your mantra. You don't permit yourself to waste your time on your phone or in unnecessary conversations. You really just do the mantra as much as you can. And by the second day, you see, whoa, interesting. If I did this for like a week or a month, what kind of configuration would that give rise to? Yeah, it doesn't mean that the room will be any different than this, but there are different rooms. So, especially with the visual object, it's possible to essentially fall into it, become absorbed in it. And that's what the classic definition of jhana is, or absorption, samadhi. Your mind, your mind becomes so relaxed, so still, so let go with the meditation object that it just disappears into it, gets absorbed into it. It's not something that can be made to happen. It's not even a goal that you need to have, but I do need to make a disclaimer that that's something that can happen. Yeah. It is possible that it gets so quiet that weird things start to occur. Yeah, that is possible. That's right. Maybe not on a 2 day, or but if you were to do a longer retreat, good example is Daniel Ingram's fire casino stuff. It's different than the technique that we'll be doing, but that's an example of um, the changes that can happen in perception and um, access to different rooms of experience and consciousness that can open as a result of very very continuous noticing. Yeah, so there's that. All right. Well, um, we can either do questions or we can just start meditating. I'm okay with either one. Does anyone have questions?